hopefully God's got this one, because that seemed like an epic fail.
Let's talk today about a conversation you have had. Set it up. What happened?
He all of a sudden erupted in this emotional response. And he says, "You can't tell me that there's anything to this Christianity thing. My brother was abused by a Catholic priest, so don't even start with me."
So what do you say when somebody reacts like that?
I needed to make sure.
This week on the Reach Podcast. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Reach Podcast. I am joined by Brian DeVries. Brian is our area director out in the Twin Cities up in Minnesota, the great state of Minnesota. Brian, thank you for being here.
Glad to be here.
Well, let's talk today about a conversation that you have had, and why don't you just set it up? What happened?
Well, I remember a very specific conversation I had with a guy that I used to work with.
Okay.
And it was burgers and beers, just casual conversation. And I must have alluded, I don't remember exactly the details of what led to the response that he gave me, but I must have alluded to something that had to do with faith or with my faith or about Christianity. But he all of a sudden erupted in this emotional response, very angry. And he says, "You can't tell me that there's anything to this Christianity thing. My brother was abused by a Catholic priest, so don't even start with me." Ooh. So it was tough. I mean, that immediate sharp response, I realized, well, I guess we're done with that topic. And we just moved on. And so I just thought, wow, hopefully God's got this one, because that seemed like an epic fail.
So this is the shortest conversation in the history of the podcast, I think. Okay, but on a serious note, what do you say when somebody reacts like that, and for the reason, which
Sure
makes sense?
Sure. I knew that the emotional response, and by the way, that's out of our 3 barriers.
Yeah.
That was clearly the emotional response that he had based on a past event. I needed to make sure that I told him I'm sorry that happened, but I knew that there was nothing I was going to be able to say that was going to make him feel any better, right? There was nothing that I could do to change his emotional feelings at that point. So I really just let it go and carried on the relationship, right? So we continued to work together, talk together. He had me drive his fancy car. That was kind of fun.
If you don't know, Brian is a car guy. So, yeah.
And that was kind of the end of the conversations until the next time we talked.
Yeah. So, because I don't want to get there too fast. When you leave, you mentioned you feel like, man, I've really failed. You're just going, what?
I was devastated. I mean, I thought that we could at least talk about what he believed, and he didn't even want to go there. He didn't want to hear about what I believed. He didn't want to hear about anything. It was just stay back.
Yeah.
Right? Don't talk to me about this topic at all.
Yeah. And so you chose not to, I guess,
Yep.
right? So you respected what he wanted to do, and do you feel like that was a good way to handle it?
I think that was really the only thing I could do at that point. There was nothing I was going to do that was going to be earth-shaking. I wasn't going to be changing his mind. I wasn't going to be able to argue him out of how he felt, right? I wasn't going to be able to, do a point, counterpoint, nothing. So I just made an effort to make sure that we were still good friends.
Yeah, and that's really all you probably can do, like you're saying. And so, what would you say to somebody who's listening to this and maybe has found or will find themselves in a similar situation? Advice, tips, even just
Sure.
biblical ways to think through how to do this?
Well, of the 1, 2, 3, in the 2 key principles, the one that stood out at that moment was that God is responsible for the results and not me. I could have sat there and even though I felt like, this stinks, I really, whiffed on this, but the second point really helped, knowing that God is going to take care of this. This is not up to me. I am not responsible for making sure that I close the deal with this guy in a conversation. If I really trust that God has this, that God may have set up 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 other people that are going to be in his life that could have an influence on his faith decision in the future. If I can trust on that, that really relieves all that weight that I feel and that pressure of the moment, and actually removes the awkward piece of those conversations, really, to know that, God's got this.
Hey everyone, I'm so glad you're listening to the Reach podcast. Reach is brought to you by Search, a ministry that helps you share Jesus. If you like what you're hearing, you'll love the Reach series. The Reach series is our new self-paced video course that gives you what you need to build relationships and have conversations about Jesus in a way that fits you. It won't cost you anything, so check it out today at reachothers.org. Now, let's get back to the podcast.
What comes to my mind too is that this is a little extreme, this kind of conversation and all that. But what's not extreme is just the idea that we're usually just, if we're fortunate, we can see a little bit of movement in a conversation or in a short period of time. Pretty rare to go in a short period of time from somebody who you barely know to you share the gospel with them and they believe in Jesus, and especially if that's all like one conversation. And yet, for most of us, that's what we think of as evangelism. Get to the gospel, okay, make a decision, yes or no. If you say yes, maybe I'll keep hanging out with you. If you say no, done with you, you heard, you rejected, I'm moving on, I'm going to the next thing. Maybe a little extreme there too.
Sure.
But there's a little truth to it. So in at least what we do with adults, right, it does seem like over time there is a trusting of God. There's a trusting that we're playing a part if we're praying and we're being intentional and we're taking open doors, if you will, as they come. We're not ramming them down with our shoulder. And so I think that's a good way to think, just to encourage people that this
absolutely.
will happen. It will not always go great if
Well,
you're seeking to share Jesus.
Yeah, we may be earning the right to be heard.
Yeah.
But that's not guaranteeing that once we have that right, that it will be heard.
No. Okay, so what happens? You kind of started to go there, but
So I moved, and we had a separation of distance, and it was over a year later. I get a phone call out of the blue from this guy, and he says, "Hey Brian, I just wanted to tell you something. I wanted to tell you that I just got baptized." And I'm thinking, wow. That's really a long distance from where we left off that conversation on that topic. And he told me a story of how it happened.
what happened?
So he was very much into fitness and had a membership at Gold's Gym, and he was working out, and he met this guy in Gold's Gym. Turns out this guy is a pastor. As he went with this pastor to his church, he got to know him and developed some understanding of Christianity and made a faith decision. Now, what was so funny is in the middle of the story, he stops me and he says, "Did you know that there are pastors out there that preach in untucked flannel shirts and jeans?" And I'm like, actually, I did know that. But his experience was only a formal experience through the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
So he had never seen or heard or anything like this. And this gentleman had done what we hope, right? He had developed the personal relationship with him where he could share in a meaningful conversation, and that emotional pain that was there had apparently subsided for whatever reason, and he was able to engage in a productive relationship with a Christian, which is really interesting in the book called I Once Was Lost.
Okay.
The book called I Once Was Lost. It talks about, in this research, what's common about persons that become believers in Christ, because there is not a common method of delivery of the gospel. But in the book, it actually talks about, in their research, what's common for people that become believers of Christ is that they first develop a trusting relationship with somebody who's a believer. Mm-hmm. Almost always, in every case, that is where the beginning point happens. And that's what happened to this guy at Gold's Gym.
And here's what I love about this story. How easy would it have been for this guy to never call you?
Right.
And you never know.
Right.
So you only know he gets kind of tweaked the one time you try to talk about him, you guys move on. And that could have been all you thought. And yet God was clearly at work somehow, had somebody else in mind, maybe, who knows, maybe even a whole bunch more people, but at least this particular pastor was instrumental. And it's pretty cool that this a friend of yours thought to call you and tell you what happened.
Yeah, it's a rare privilege, really.
Yeah.
And I recognize that when it happened, that how many of the other people that we may have met and have had, I don't want to say similar conversations, but at least ones that didn't feel productive in the sense of you saw them make a profession of faith. What a great privilege it was to actually see the thing that often goes unnoticed or unknown. To have that privilege was huge. It was really cool.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, and I think a really great story for everybody to hear. Just because of really it touches on so many of the things that we talk about here all the time on the podcast. So, okay, boil it all down for me, and I just want you to think of the one takeaway that you would want people to know, remember, apply from everything we've just been talking about.
You know, you never know when a conversation that you're going to have is going to be spiritually significant, right? You never know when that's going to happen. It could happen at any point in time. So just understand that you got to be ready for when that moment happens, but you may not even know when it happened.
Yeah, that's a great point. We really just don't always know what's going on, do we? So,
Nope.
Brian, thank you very much for being here, for being my guest. This was fun. We'll have to do it again.
We will.
Okay, thanks.
All right, bye.
Thanks for listening to the Reach Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. That'd be a good idea. Share it with a friend and leave us a review to help others find the podcast. Now, for more resources, please visit reachothers.org and follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and we'd love to hear from you.